Hi guys, tonight we're slipping back into the warm, green beginning of cotton, to a time when fabric is not yet stacked in shops, not yet stitched into shirts, not yet folded into hotel towels that somehow feel like a cloud with a laundry bill. You're standing near a riverbank at dusk, where insects hum over wet soil, payams lean into purple light, and a pale tuft of fibre catches on a thorn like a tiny ghost. How did this soft little plant become one of the most powerful materials in human history? How did something so quiet touch farmers, kings, traders, enslaved workers, factory children, fashion, war, money, and the bedsheets around you right now? So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you are listening from, plus your local time. Because somewhere out there, somebody is hearing this at 2:17 in the morning and pretending they are not sleepy. Now, dim the lights. You stand at the edge of a warm river plain long before anyone calls cotton by a familiar name. The air is thick enough to feel on your lips. It smells of mud, crushed leaves, damp bark, and smoke from a small cooking fire that has burned low behind you. Somewhere in the reeds, water moves with a patient little sound, the kind that seems to breathe in the dark. You lower your hand toward a shrub with broad leaves and split pods, and your fingers brush something unexpectedly soft. Not fur, not wool, not feather. A loose white fibre clings to your skin, delicate and stubborn at the same time. This is the first surprise of cotton. It looks fragile, almost shy, but it does not let go easily. The fibres wrap around the tiny seeds because the plant has its own ancient business to manage. It is not trying to make your tunic more comfortable. Plants, inconveniently, do not organize themselves around human laundry needs. Cotton's fluffy fibres help protect seeds and may help them travel, though not in the tidy, heroic way people later imagined. You're only one curious human among many, noticing that this strange softness can be pulled, twisted, rolled between fingers, and made into a line that holds together. At first, you do not invent an industry. You play, you test. You tug the fibre apart and watch it stretch into a fine cloudy strand. It catches on your rough fingertips. It gathers burrs, dust, and bits of dry shell. If you bring it close to your face, it has almost no smell of its own. Only the field around it, warm grass, sun-dried seed, earth, and the faint salt of your hands. A few steps away, someone laughs quietly at your concentration. Every new technology begins with a person looking slightly foolish while poking at something. History is kinder if we admit that. The earliest path toward cotton cloth is not one single road. That is one of the beautiful complications. Cotton is not born in one royal workshop, announced by a trumpet, then shipped politely to the rest of humanity. Different species of cotton grow in different regions, and people in more than one part of the world learn, separately, that these fibres can be spun. In the Old World, communities in South Asia begin using cotton very early, and in the Americas, people also domesticate native cotton plants. This mainstream fact matters because cotton is not just an invention. It is a conversation between landscapes and human hands, repeated in distant places under different skies. You crouch near the plant and notice the seeds are a nuisance. Of course they are. Nothing useful arrives without a tiny problem attached. The lint is wrapped around them, and each seed resists being freed, as if it has hired a very small lawyer, before metal gins, before machines, before the great roar of mills. This work belongs to fingers, shells, sticks, stones, and patience. You pinch and pull. You roll the seed against your palm. A few fibres come away. Many remain. The sound is soft. A little dry whisper. Almost nothing. Yet it is the beginning of a labour that will one day occupy millions. There are older materials around you already. Animal skins keep out the cold. Flax can become linen. Reeds and grasses can be woven into mats. Bark cloth can be beaten into useful sheets. Wool can be shorn from sheep where sheep are kept. Cotton enters this world not as a conqueror, but as another possibility. Its magic is comfort in heat. In a humid place, thick hides are not exactly a relaxing lifestyle choice. Linen is smooth and strong, but cotton has a gentle breathability that later generations will adore, complain about, wash badly, shrink accidentally, and continue buying forever. Imagine the first simple spindle, not a grand tool, just a stick with a weighted whirl, turning with a quiet wobble. You sit near a fire while night insects click in the grass. Someone draws cleaned cotton fibres into a loose strand and twists them. Twist is everything without twist. The fibres drift apart like sleepy thoughts. With twist, they grip one another. The strand grows longer, and you feel it tighten between your fingers. It is not perfect. It thickens, thins, breaks, and must be joined again. But suddenly the plant has become thread, and thread is an idea with legs. Historians still argue whether the earliest cotton users valued it first for everyday clothing, fishing lines, nets, ritual objects, padding, or trade goods. The evidence is scattered and fragile because cloth decays. That is almost rude of it, considering how much we would like ancient fabric to remain neatly labelled for us. In damp climates, early textiles vanish into soil, leaving only impressions, tools, seeds, or tiny fibres caught in places where chance protects them. So you move through a world where much has been lost, and yet the outline remains. People grew cotton, cleaned it, spun it, and found it worth the effort. The atmosphere around you changes with morning. Mist lifts from low fields. Birds call from branches, sharp and liquid. You walk with a small group toward cultivated patches, not yet the endless white fields of later centuries, but modest plantings near food crops, water, and homes. Cotton asks for attention. It wants warmth. It dislikes frost. It can survive in tough places, but the best harvest come from knowing soil, season, and rain. You kneel and press the dirt. It is warm under the surface, crumbly where it has dried, cool where yesterday's water lingers. Farming begins in the body as much as in the mind. The cotton pod, or boll, is a small container of suspense. While green, it hides its treasure. Then it dries, tightens, and splits open. The fibre bursts outward in pale curls. Under strong sun, a plant heavy with open bolls can seem sprinkled with bits of cloud. That image will become famous much later, but here it is intimate. You're close enough to see brown flecks in the lint, to feel the prick of dry edges, to hear the little crackle of husk beneath your thumb. The plant gives softness from a shell that can scratch you. Cotton is gentle, yes, but never entirely innocent. A quirky little tidbit drifts near the edge of cotton's story for centuries. Some people far from cotton fields imagine plant fibre in almost magical terms. Later travellers and storytellers helped spread the strange myth of a vegetable lamb, a creature supposedly growing from a plant and producing wool. It sounds adorable, suspicious, and extremely inconvenient to share. While that tale belongs to later imagination rather than the first farmers, it reveals something important. To people unfamiliar with cotton, soft fibre from a plant felt almost impossible. Wool came from animals. Flax came from stems. But fluffy plant wool that sounded like nature had started joking. You move now into a settlement where cotton has entered daily life in small but meaningful ways. A child carries a twist of fibre. An older woman turns a spindle with steady calm. A man repairs a net with thread that may include cotton, plant fibre, or other materials combined by habit and experiment. No one here says they're changing world history. They're keeping comfortable, storing skill, solving little problems. The great forces of history often begin as household routines. Someone wants a lighter cloth. Someone wants cord that does not scrape the skin. Someone wants a gift worthy of a ceremony. Softness becomes useful, then valued, then desired. Touch guides everything. You learn to judge cotton by feel how clean it is, how long the fibres are, how easily they draw into thread. Longer fibres usually spin more smoothly. Shorter fibres can be more troublesome, but people are wonderfully stubborn when a material is worth having. You roll a bit between thumb and forefinger. It warms quickly. It does not shine like silk or hang like linen, but it has a modest charm, a quiet closeness. Cotton is the fabric of contact. It belongs near skin, near sweat, near sleep, near work. Even in its earliest form, it suggests the human body. In South Asia, archaeological traces show cotton use stretching deep into ancient times, and the Indus world will become one of the great early centres of cotton textile skill. Far away, in parts of the Americas, communities work with their own cotton species, including varieties that can grow in natural shades, sometimes creamy, tan, or brown. You can picture this not as one discovery, but as many dawns. A woman in one valley twists fibre, a fisher in another tests cord, a farmer saves seed from a better plant, a family chooses cotton that opens more fully, spins more cleanly, feels finer against the skin. Domestication is slow preference made visible. There is no sudden thunderclap. The plant changes because people select it. People change because the plant rewards them. Seeds from useful shrubs are kept. Better fibres are noticed. Planting becomes more intentional. Harvesting becomes timed. Cleaning becomes skill. Spinning becomes art. Weaving waits in the distance like a loom-shaped dream. But already the essential transformation has happened. You have taken a wild fibre and persuaded it into culture. That may sound gentle, but it is one of the deepest human powers to notice a living thing, return to it, tend it, alter it, and let it alter you in return. Evening settles again over the river plain. Smoke rises blue from cooking fires. The smell of wet earth deepens as the air cools. Your hands are dusty, faintly scratched, and carrying a few clinging strands of cotton that refuse to leave. Nearby, the spindle turns, slows, turns again. Its motion is small, but it gathers time. Each twist stores attention. Each thread holds a little weather, a little labour, a little human hope that tomorrow's cloth may be softer than yesterday's. You listen to the night sounds, the insects, the low voices, the quiet scrape of fibre being cleaned. Cotton has not conquered anything yet. It has only touched the hand, and the hand has understood. You walk into a city of baked brick, where dawn arrives pale and gold over straight streets, flat roofs, and wells lined with careful masonry. The air smells of river silt, cooking grain, warm clay, and the faint dusty sweetness of stored fibre. Somewhere nearby, a spindle turns in a courtyard. Its soft whir is almost hidden beneath footsteps, animal bells, and the murmur of people beginning their work. You are in the world of the Indus Valley, one of the great urban cultures of the ancient world, where cotton becomes not just a plant fibre, but a sign of skill, order, and daily comfort. Here, cotton fits into a civilization that loves measurement. Bricks are made to regular proportions. Streets drain with surprising discipline. Weights are standardized. Seals are carved with animals and mysterious signs that no one today can fully read, which is honestly a little dramatic of them. In this setting, cloth is part of a larger rhythm of planning and exchange. You imagine bundles of cotton thread stored beside beads, shells, metal tools, and grain. The fabric may be plain, dyed, wrapped, traded, washed, worn, and worn again. It moves quietly through life, closer to the skin than pottery, less visible than city walls, but just as human, A mainstream fact rests beneath your feet. The Indus region is among the earliest known centres of cotton textile production. Archaeological traces suggest that cotton was being used there thousands of years ago, making South Asia central to the long story of cotton cloth. You see why. The climate can suit the plant. The river systems support farming. Towns create demand. Craft workers refine techniques. No single person needs to understand the entire system. A farmer grows the crop. A cleaner frees the fibre. A spinner makes thread. A weaver forms cloth. A trader carries it outward. Civilization, very often, is just thousands of small tasks trusting one another. You pass through a shaded doorway into a workspace where the floor is cool under your bare feet. A woman sits near a low basket, drawing fibre into thread with practiced ease. Her fingers know when the strand is too loose, when it needs more twist, when a weak place must be smoothed. The fibres brush her skin like dry mist. The room smells of oil, dust, and packed earth. A child watches, bored and fascinated at the same time, which is the correct emotional balance for learning household labour. Outside, a cart creaks. Inside, the thread lengthens. The motion is quiet, but the result is revolutionary. Cotton cloth is different from skins and some heavier textiles because it can breathe in heat. It can absorb sweat. It can be wrapped, layered, folded, and washed. In a warm urban world, that matters. You feel a piece of woven cotton laid across your arm. It is not yet the soft modern cotton of machine finishing and detergent commercials. It may be uneven, slightly nubby, carrying the memory of hand-spun thread, but it is flexible. It gives. It moves with you. It is the sort of fabric that makes a hot day more bearable, and history is full of people making hot days just a little less rude. From the Indus region, your path drifts westward through trade and rumour, not in a straight line, but through human contact. Cotton travels as fibre, thread, cloth, and knowledge. It may move by caravan, riverboat, coastal vessel, gift, migration, or imitation. Ancient people are not sealed inside tidy museum cases. They bargain, borrow, boast, marry, migrate, and copy attractive things shamelessly, as humans have always done. A merchant touches cotton cloth and notices that it is light. A buyer compares it with linen. A ruler sees taxable value. A household sees comfort. In every hand, cotton becomes a slightly different idea. Now the light changes. You stand near the Nile, where water slides between green fields and desert edges sharp as a blade. The air is drier here. It smells of reeds, fish, sun-baked mud, and the mineral breath of stone. Egypt is famous for linen, made from flax, and linen dominates much of Egyptian clothing and ritual practice for a very long time. You can see it in the clean, pale garments of priests, workers, officials, and the dead prepared for burial. Cotton does not immediately replace linen. It enters a world with strong textile traditions already in place, and it must find its own place among them. Egyptian textile life is full of texture and meaning. Cloth is practical, sacred, economic, and social. Fine linen can signal purity and status. Wrapping the body can be an act of care, ceremony, and belief. Cotton appears more prominently in Egypt in later ancient periods than in the earliest dynasties, especially as wider trade connections deepen. Yet the Nile world helps show an important truth. Cotton's rise is never automatic. A society may already love another fibre. It may have tools, rituals, and habits built around flax. Cotton does not simply stroll in wearing sunglasses and take over. It negotiates slowly through usefulness. Farther south, you enter Nubia and the kingdoms along the Nile corridor where cultures interact with Egypt but keep their own power, artistry, and identity. The sun feels stronger on your shoulders. Sand presses into your sandals. In settlements and cemeteries, cloth can reveal contact, wealth, and local taste. Nubian textile traditions include a variety of materials and techniques, shaped by trade routes running through Africa and toward the Red Sea. Cotton becomes part of this network in significant ways, especially in later periods, connecting fields, workshops, soldiers, rulers, and traders across a region too often treated as a footnote when it deserves its own candlelit room. You pause near a market where voices overlap in several languages. There are baskets, hides, beads, grain, metal goods, and cloth. The cloth is the quiet negotiator. It folds easily. It can be carried farther than pottery. It can be cut, gifted, taxed, stored, and displayed. You touch a length of cotton with dyed stripes, perhaps local, perhaps imported, perhaps made by hands whose names are gone. The edge rubs softly against your thumb. Nearby, a donkey snorts with theatrical exhaustion. Even ancient commerce has someone making a noise like they personally invented hardship. Historians still argue whether some ancient cotton textiles found around the Nile world were locally produced, imported from farther east or south, or made through mixed traditions that are difficult to separate. The difficulty lies in the evidence. Fibres decay, labels are absent, ancient trade does not leave receipts in a neat folder marked cotton, definitely local. Please cite responsibly. Scholars compare fibres, weaving patterns, dyes, burial contexts, and written clues, but uncertainty remains. That uncertainty is not a failure. It is part of the atmosphere, like dust in a shaft of sunlight, making the past visible because it is not perfectly clear. Now you cross an ocean of imagination to the ancient Americas, where cotton develops along its own path. The air grows warmer and saltier. You hear waves striking a dry coast, gulls crying overhead, and nets being shaken free of sand. Along the coast of what is now Peru, cotton becomes essential not only for clothing, but for fishing technology. People twist cotton into nets and lines, pairing inland and coastal economies in a beautiful exchange. Farmers provide cotton. Fishers provide food from the sea. The smell here is sharp and alive salt, fish, smoke, seaweed, and dry desert wind. This is one of cotton's most fascinating roles. It is not only something you wear, it helps catch what you eat. Strong thread can become netting. Netting can pull protein from the water. Food supports communities. Communities build monuments, rituals, and memory. A soft fibre becomes part of survival. You stand beside a fisher repairing a net, and the cotton cord slides through his fingers. Rougher now because it has been twisted tight and used hard. It smells faintly of salt and old water. The net is not luxurious. It is practical genius, and practical genius is often underappreciated because it does not sparkle. In Mesoamerica, cotton also becomes deeply valued. You walk through a humid lowland where insects sing from thick greenery and bright birds flash between trees. Cotton can be grown, spun, dyed, and woven into garments of status and tribute. Among the Maya and later the Mexica world, cotton cloth may serve as clothing, tax, gift, and marker of rank. Some garments are decorated with colour and pattern, carrying messages about identity and position. You feel the social weight of fabric. A cloth can cover the body, yes, but it can also announce who gets to stand where, who owes what, and who must be noticed. A quirky detail from the Americas' naturally coloured cottons are not a modern boutique invention, despite sounding like something sold by a very calm person at an expensive farmer's market. Some ancient American cotton varieties produced fibres in shades such as brown or tan, reducing the need for dye in certain uses. Imagine opening a bowl and finding not pure white, but a warm earthy colour already waiting. It is a small botanical surprise, a reminder that the cotton family is more varied than the bleached simplicity many people picture. Nature, as usual, had a wider wardrobe than expected. You move among ancient cotton worlds without forcing them into one story. The Indus cities, Nile cultures, Nubian kingdoms, Andean fishing communities, Maya courts, and other societies do not all use cotton in the same way. That is the point. Cotton adapts. It can be humble or prestigious, plain or patterned, local or traded, sacred or sweaty, a net in the surf or a garment in a palace. Its value comes from flexibility. It enters daily life through touch, but it enters history through systems, farming, labour, exchange, status, climate and need. As evening settles, you stand in a courtyard where woven cloth hangs from a line, moving gently in warm air. The fabric catches fading light, each thread crossing another with patient precision. You hear a spindle slow, a loom frame creak, a market quiet down, a river continue its ancient conversation with the shore. Cotton has become many things at once. It is a crop in the soil, a task in the hands, a comfort against the body, a trade good in a bundle, a symbol in a ceremony, and a tool beside the sea. You breathe in dust, smoke, salt, and green leaves, and the soft cloth near your wrist seems almost ordinary, which is exactly how powerful things like to hide. You sit in the low shade of a doorway while the morning warms slowly around you. Dust hangs in the light like pale flour. A rooster complains somewhere behind a wall because every age has at least one bird with no respect for peace. In front of you, a basket of harvested cotton rests on packed earth. The bolls have already split. The white fibre spills out in uneven clumps, tangled with seeds, bits of husk, dry leaf, and the occasional stubborn burr. It looks soft from a distance, but the first lesson of cotton is waiting in your fingertips. Softness begins with work. You reach into the basket. The fibre is warm from the sun, light as breath, yet full of small hard seeds that catch and cling. When you pull gently, the lint stretches, but the seed remains wrapped inside like a secret refusing to confess. Your nails scrape against the smooth seed coat. A dry clicking sound comes as seeds drop into a clay bowl. The smell is plain and earthy, not perfume, not spice, only field, dust, and the faint green memory of the plant. It is humble work, but nothing about it is simple when you must do it for hours. In a household where cotton matters, the day divides itself around hands. Some hands pick, some clean, some card off fluff, some spin, some weave. Children help by sorting, carrying, teasing apart fibres, and learning what counts as useful. Older people judge the quality of cotton by touch and sight. They notice whether the fibre is too dirty, too short, too damp, too full of seed, or good enough to become a thread that will not constantly snap and embarrass everyone involved. Cotton turns a home into a small workshop, even when no one uses such a formal word. A mainstream historical fact settles into this quiet room before industrial machinery. Spinning was one of the most time-consuming forms of textile labour across many societies. Making cloth required far more than weaving. The loom may look impressive, with its frame, tension, and patterned movement. But the loom is hungry. It consumes thread. A weaver can use up in a day what spinners may have taken many days to produce. So that the real heartbeat of cotton textile life is often the spindle, turning again and again in courtyards, kitchens, shaded verandas, and walking paths. You hold a spindle in your palm. It is a simple tool, almost disappointingly modest for something so important. A slim shaft, a small whirl for weight, perhaps made of clay, stone, shell, or wood. You twist it and let it drop, and the spindle spins with a low, whispering hum. The loose cotton fibres draw down into a narrowing strand. Your other hand must feed the fibre carefully, neither too fast nor too slow. If you rush, the thread weakens. If you hesitate, it thickens. If your mind wanders, the spindle immediately knows and punishes you with a break. Ancient tools can be very petty. The thread breaks often while you learn. You pinch the ends, overlap them, add twist, and the strand becomes whole again. The join is not invisible, but it holds. A good spinner has rhythm in the wrist and judgment in the fingertips. The movement becomes almost musical. Draw, twist, wind, draw, twist, wind. The spindle gathers thread around its shaft like time coiling into a small portable memory. Outside, a breeze carries the smell of cooking lentils, damp laundry, and animal dung drying for fuel. The world is practical. The world is fragrant in ways travel brochures tend to edit out. Cotton is not equally easy for every spinner. Its fibres are shorter than many wool fibres and behave differently from flax. They need skillful preparation and steady twist. In some regions, people use a small bow to fluff cotton, its string twanging softly as it vibrates through the fibres. The sound is strange and gentle, a low musical thrum that makes the lint open and loosen. Here is a quirky tidbit worth keeping under your pillow in parts of South Asia. Cotton cleaning and fluffing with a bow became so recognizable that the cotton carder's bow had its own cultural presence, almost like a household instrument that played the song of future cloth. You watch someone use such a bow, the string snaps lightly against cotton laid on a mat, and the fibres jump apart into a soft cloud. Dust rises, you smell dry seed coats, sun-warmed straw, and the faint musk of bodies working close together. The fluffed cotton looks more inviting now, though it is still not lazy. It must be rolled into small punnies or loose bundles, ready for spinning. The worker's hands move quickly, palms smoothing the fibre into forms that can be drawn out evenly. You try to copy the motion. Yours looks like a tired caterpillar. Nobody says anything, which is generous. Household labour is not just labour, but it's education, memory, and social structure. A child learns by sitting close, listening to older voices, absorbing technique through repetition. A young person may be praised for making even thread. A bride's skill in spinning or weaving may matter in some communities. Cloth production can be tied to gender, age, status, caste, class, kinship, or obligation, depending on place and period. The cotton in your hand is therefore never only cotton. It carries rules about who works, who owns, who teaches, who profits, and who gets to rest. Scholars still argue over whether early cotton production in some regions was mainly a household craft, a specialized profession, or a flexible mixture that shifted by season, market demand, and social rank. The uncertainty comes from the ordinary nature of the work. Spindles and whorls survive better than the people who use them. A tool found in a house does not always tell you whether the user worked for family needs, local exchange, elite demand, or temple supply. The past leaves clues, not signed statements. So you sit among fragments and must listen carefully. The loom waits in another shaded space, a frame of wood and tension. Threads are stretched lengthwise as the warp. Another thread crosses them as the weft. Over and under. Over and under. The structure of cloth emerges. Cotton thread behaves with its own personality. It can be soft but fragile if spun unevenly. It may need sizing, smoothing, or careful handling to stand the strain of weaving. You hear the dry tap of a shuttle, the creak of tightened threads, the occasional sigh of a weaver whose thread has snapped for the 5th time. This is where patience becomes architecture. Dye adds another layer of labour and imagination. Cotton may be left pale, but it can also take colour through skilled treatment. Some dyes grip plant fibres easily only with help from mordants or repeated processes. You smell vats of plant matter, minerals, sour liquids, ash, or fermented mixtures. Not all dye workshops are romantic. Some smell like a swamp made a business decision. Yet the results can be beautiful reds, blues, browns, yellows, blacks, patterns formed by resist techniques, stripes, checks, borders, and symbols. Colour transforms cotton from useful covering into message, identity, and desire. You move through an ordinary day shaped by textile rhythm. While grain cooks, fibre is cleaned. While someone watches animals, thread is spun. While neighbours talk, cotton is rolled and prepared. The work fits between other duties, which means it can disappear from formal history. A king's inscription may boast of conquest, but it rarely pauses to say who spun the thread in his robe. A merchant's account may record clother's value, but not the sore back of the person who sat in dim light making it possible. Cotton's history is full of vanished names and surviving textures. The body feels the work. Your shoulders tighten from bending. Your thumb grows tender where the thread runs. Fine dust tickles your nose. Cotton lint clings to your hair, your sleeve, the damp places at your wrist. In warm weather, fibres stick to sweat. In dry weather, they fly into the air and settle everywhere, as if the plant has decided to redecorate the entire household. A bowl of seeds sits nearby, hard and smooth, waiting to be planted, pressed for oil in some later traditions, fed to animals in certain forms, or discarded. Even waste has possibilities, though it often takes people a while to notice. Trade may begin with surplus, but surplus begins with extra work. When a household produces more thread or cloth than it needs, cotton can move outward. A small roll of fabric may pay a debt, secure a favour, mark a relationship, or enter a market. Cloth is convenient wealth because it is useful, divisible, portable, and desirable. You fold a length of cotton and feel its lightness. Compared with sacks of grain or jars of oil, cloth travels with elegance. It does not slosh. It does not spoil quickly. It does not complain, which already makes it better company than some pack animals. Yet cotton is never free from weather. Rain at the wrong time can stain open bowls. Damp storage can ruin fibre. Pests can damage plants. Too little water weakens growth. Too much water invites trouble. Farmers watch the sky with the anxious calm of people who know the sky is not taking requests. They choose seed, prepare fields, weed, harvest, and hope. The softness you hold begins in uncertainty. Every thread carries a risk hidden inside it, the risk of drought, insects, rot, poor soil, tired hands, broken tools, and markets that may not reward the labour fairly. As dusk gathers, the household slows but does not fall silent. The spindle still turns near the doorway. A loom rests under cloth to keep dust away. The basket of cleaned fibre is smaller now. Your fingertips feel dry, slightly raw, and strangely proud. You have not made much thread, but you understand more than you did at sunrise. Cotton is not a miracle that appears as fabric. It is a chain of touch plant to bowl, bowl to basket, basket to seed bowl, fibre to spindle, spindle to thread, thread to loom, loom to cloth, cloth to skin. The night air cools. Smoke from cooking fires lies low against the ground. You hear quiet conversation, a baby stirring, a dog turning in its sleep, the final soft scrape of a spindle being set aside. In the dimness, cotton loses its brightness and becomes a pale blur beside the mat. It looks peaceful now, almost effortless. That is cotton's oldest trick. It hides labour inside comfort. You run a finished thread between your fingers and feel the twist holding firm, a small line of human patience stretched through the dark. You step onto a road at first light, where the earth is hard beneath your sandals and the air tastes faintly of dust. A caravan is waking around you. Camels groan with the deep irritation of creatures who know they are about to be useful. Donkey stamp, men tighten ropes around bundles wrapped in rough cloth. Somewhere inside those bundles are lengths of cotton, folded and pressed, lighter than jars of oil, less fragile than pottery, and far easier to carry than grain. The road ahead is long, but cotton is patient. It travels well when people make it worth the trouble. A merchant lifts a bale and tests its weight against his hip. It smells of dry fibre, storage rooms, sweat, and the faint sharpness of dye. The cloth inside may have begun in a field near a river, in a village workshop, or in a town where weavers work so steadily that their looms seem to breathe. Now it has become a travelling object, an item with a destination, a price, and a little aura of possibility. In markets, cotton can be everyday cloth, but it can also become a temptation, a soft weave, a fine pattern, a bright border. And suddenly someone is bargaining with great seriousness over something they definitely told themselves they did not need. Across ancient and medieval trade routes, textiles often move more easily than many other goods. Cloth can be rolled, stacked, divided, and hidden. It can be used as payment, tribute, gift, or diplomatic offering. A mainstream historical fact becomes visible in the dust. Indian cotton textiles were traded widely across the Indian Ocean and into regions of West Asia, East Africa, Southeast Asia, and eventually Europe. Their reputation for lightness, colour, and workmanship helped make cotton one of the most admired fabrics in a long-distance commerce. You can hear that admiration in the bargaining, in the careful way buyers unfold the corners, in the silence that falls when the quality is very good. You join a caravan moving toward a city gate. Bells knock softly against animal necks. Wheels creak. The sun climbs and warms the packed road until heat rises against your calves. At the gate, officials inspect goods with the solemn expression of people who have discovered taxation and intend to make everyone share their joy. Cloth is counted, measured, assessed. A scribe notes quantities. A guard presses his thumb against a seal. Cotton enters the city not simply as fabric, but as revenue. Rulers may prefer gold, of course, because rulers have always had predictable taste. But cloth is reliable wealth. Everyone needs covering, wrap-in, bed-in, bags, sails, shade, and status. The market inside the walls is a river of sound. Sellers call out in layered voices. Metal workers strike bright notes from bronze and iron. Grain pours like dry rain into a measure. Spices release warm smells of cumin, pepper, cardamom, and smoke. Dyed cotton hangs from wooden poles, fluttering in strips of red, blue, yellow, brown, and white. You brush past a bolt of cloth and feel it skim your forearm, cooler than the air, smooth in one place and slightly raised where a pattern tightens the weave. A buyer pinches it between finger and thumb, testing density, softness, evenness. There is nothing sleepy about a serious textile buyer. Cotton trade depends on trust, but trust is never allowed to travel alone. It brings weights, measures, seals, contracts, witnesses, reputations, and occasionally loud arguments. A merchant claims the weave is finer than moonlight. The buyer says it is barely fit for wrapping onions. Both of them know they are performing. Around them, assistants unfold cloth, refold it, shake out dust, and watch for flaws. A small stain can lower the price. Uneven thread can start a debate. A faded colour can inspire theatrical disappointment. Commerce is practical, yes, but it is also theatre with math. You follow cotton toward the coast, where the smell of the world changes. Dry road dust gives way to salt, tar, fish, wet rope, and the sour breath of crowded docks. Ships lie in the harbour with curved hulls and patched sails. Sailors carry jars, timber, sacks, and bales. Cotton cloth is excellent cargo because it can be packed tightly and sold in distant ports where local tastes differ. On the Indian Ocean, monsoon winds shape travel. Merchants wait for seasonal winds to carry them across the sea, then wait again for winds to bring them home. Cotton moves not only by human desire, but by weather. At the dock, you watch a bale disappear into a ship's hold. The air below deck is hot and close, smelling of wood, oil, damp fibre and old salt. Rats consider the whole arrangement with professional interest. The cloth will ride through storms, calms and crowded anchorages. It may be exchanged for spices, horses, ivory, metal, incense, ceramics, or coins. In one port, a cotton piece may become a servant's garment, in another a noblewoman's veil. Somewhere else, a lining, a banner, a quilted jacket, a child's wrap, a trader's sample. Cotton does not arrive with one meaning. It learns the language of each place. A quirky tidbit hides in the world of trade names. Some famous fabric words come from places, and cotton history is full of geography stitched into language. Calico takes its name from Calicut, a major textile port on the Malabar coast. Muslin is often linked in European writing with Mosul, though the finest muslins admired by many travellers were strongly associated with Bengal. These names travelled with merchants, sailors, and consumers, sometimes accurately, sometimes lazily, because people have always enjoyed simplifying complicated supply chains into one catchy label. The cloth moves, the name moves, and accuracy tries to keep up while panting. You sail into a port where languages collide like pebbles in surf. Arabic, Persian, Gujarati, Tamil, Malay, Swahili, and other tongues may mingle depending on the route and century. You do not need to understand every word to understand the gesture of trade. A hand spreads cloth, another hand raises 3 fingers, a head shakes, someone laughs, someone pretends to walk away, someone calls them back, because apparently humanity invented bargaining and immediately became addicted. Cotton encourages these encounters because it is desirable across cultures, yet adaptable to local style. A trader may order patterns for a particular market, knowing that colour and motif can decide profit. This is one of the quiet revolutions of cotton commerce producers begin responding to distant tastes. Weavers may create cloth for buyers they will never meet, in colours preferred across the sea, in lengths suited to foreign garments, in patterns associated with another region's fashion. Imagine that. Your hands work in one humid town, but your thread is shaped by a customer in a port hundreds or thousands of miles away. The loom becomes connected to unseen desire. The market reaches into the workshop. Globalization does not begin with glowing screens and tedious passwords. It begins with wind, ships, ledgers, and someone saying, "Can you make the border a little brighter?" Scholars still debate how much control merchants had over textile producers in different regions, and how much freedom weavers kept in choosing designs, materials, and rhythms of work. Evidence shifts by place and period. Some records suggest strong commercial direction, especially when export markets are well developed. Other evidence points to household production, local custom, and flexible arrangements that do not fit neatly into modern business categories. The uncertainty matters because cotton trade was not one machine. It was a web of farmers, spinners, dyers, washers, brokers, financiers, sailors, port officials, shopkeepers, and buyers, all tugging on the same thread. You leave the coast and enter a desert crossing. Daylight burns white on stone. At night, cold settles through your cloak and makes your fingers stiff. Cotton cloth serves you here in simple ways. It wraps goods against dust. It shades faces from sun. It pads loads where ropes might rub. It becomes a towel, a sling, a bandage, a prayer cloth, a sleeping sheet. The same fabric that dazzles in a market can become a practical companion under stars. You lie near the embers of a fire and hear animals chewing in the dark. The cotton bundle under your head smells of dust, salt, and human travel. Trade also carries ideas. A pattern seen in one port is copied in another. A dye technique is admired and adapted. A weaving style travels with migrants or captives or married artisans. Cotton helps cultures notice one another through touch. You do not have to read a foreign poem to understand that a cloth is cool, light, and beautifully made. Textiles become ambassadors that do not need translators, though they do need protection from moths, damp, and customs officers. A person wearing imported cotton may be making a statement about wealth, cosmopolitan taste, religious identity, or simple comfort, sometimes all at once, because clothing loves multitasking. In some cities, cotton competes with silk, linen, wool, and blended fabrics. Silk gleams with luxury. Wool warms. Linen carries old prestige. Cotton slips among them with practical charm. It can be cheaper than silk, lighter than wool, softer than some linens, and suitable for printing, dyeing, quilting, and layering. Its place depends on climate, price, fashion, and access. A poor labourer may wear coarse cotton. A wealthy buyer may seek fine printed cotton with colours so lively they seem almost too awake for bedtime. This same fibre can serve both necessity and vanity, which is a very efficient career. Evening falls over another market, this one lit by oil lamps. The flames tremble in clay bowls, making dyed cloth glow in warm patches. Blue deepens to shadow. Red turns like embers. White cotton catches the light and holds it softly. You hear a distant lute, the slap of sandals, the low murmur of final deals. A merchant folds the last length of fabric, smoothing it with both hands as if calming water. Tomorrow it may leave again, tied onto an animal or sealed inside a ship's hold. Cotton is never only still, even folded. It seems ready to move. You stand at the edge of the marketplace and feel how far this soft fabric can travel without losing its intimacy. It passes through ports, gates, taxes, storms, and ledgers, but its final test remains personal. Does it feel good against the skin? Does it please the eye? Does it hold colour? Does it last around you? The night air cools and the smells of spice, smoke, animals, and sea salt mingle in the dark. A folded cotton cloth rests under one arm, light enough to carry, valuable enough to guard. The road waits beyond the gate, and the fabric, quiet as moonlight, is already part of a wider world. You enter a city under imperial rule, where the morning does not begin gently so much as organize itself. A drum sounds near a gate. Hooves strike stone. A clerk unrolls a document with the sacred seriousness of someone about to make life more expensive. Around you, cotton moves through streets as cloth, tax, wages, uniforms, gifts, and courtly display. It is no longer only the concern of growers and weavers. Power has noticed it. And when power notices something soft, it usually finds a way to squeeze it. The air is heavy with sun-warmed plaster, animal sweat, sesame oil, dust, and the sweetness of dye vats simmering in hidden courtyards. You pass workshops where cotton thread hangs in loops from wooden beams. Men and women rinse cloth, beat it, stretch it, fold it, and carry it on shoulders bent by habit. Water splashes against stone basins. Wooden mallets thud in patient rhythm. A dyer stirs a vat the colour of deep blue evening, and steam touches your face with a damp, mineral warmth. The fabric slides between his hands, darkening as if it has learned a secret. In medieval Islamic cities, cotton becomes part of a sophisticated textile economy, stretching across regions connected by faith, trade, scholarship, and rule. Cotton is cultivated and manufactured in many areas from the eastern Mediterranean to Persia, Central Asia, North Africa, and South Asia. A mainstream historical fact is simple. But important cotton textiles became significant commodities in the medieval Islamic world, where advances in agriculture, irrigation, trade, and craft production helped spread cotton cultivation and cloth making across a broad geography. You feel that broadness in the marketplace, where bolts of fabric arrive from places whose names sound like invitations. You walk past a tax station where bales are inspected. Officials measure cloth, check seals, and record obligations. A farmer may owe part of a crop, a weaver may owe finished goods, a merchant may pay duties at gates, bridges, ports, or borders, because empires have a genius for discovering new doors through which money must pass. Cotton is useful to rulers because it is countable, transportable, and always in demand. Grain feeds armies, but cloth clothes them. Fine textiles reward allies. Ordinary textiles supply households. Special textiles honour temples, mosques, courts, and ceremonies. Cotton can be revenue you can touch. The imperial eye does not see cloth only as comfort. It sees administration. You notice how rulers use textiles to make hierarchy visible. In some courts, robes of honour are given to officials, generals, diplomats, and favoured servants. A robe can say, without speaking, that the wearer belongs within the ruler's light. The cloth may be silk, wool, linen, cotton, or a blend, depending on the place and rank, but the message is clear. Fabric becomes political skin. To be clothed by power is to be marked by it. Very flattering, of course, unless the same power also expects obedience, taxes, and your nephew for military service. You step into a palace storeroom, cool and shadowed. Shelves hold folded textiles wrapped against dust. Some are plain and practical. Others carry stripes, inscriptions, borders, and patterns made for display. The smell is dry and guarded cedar, old fibre, lamp oil, and the faint spice of stored luxury. A steward lifts a cotton piece and checks its edge. His thumb moves with expert suspicion. Fine cloth must be protected from damp, insects, theft, and the careless hands of people who think folding is optional. The storeroom is quiet, but it hums with wealth. Every fold is a promise, a debt, a favour, or a reward. Cotton also becomes a fabric of cities conquered and governed. Armies move through landscapes, and with them come demands for supplies. Camps need tents, padding, banners, sacks, bandages, cordage, and clothing. The texture of empire is not only marble and metal, it is canvas, thread, and laundry. You stand near an army encampment at dusk, smelling horse leather, smoke, onions frying in fat, and damp cloth drying over ropes. Soldiers mend garments with blunt concentration. A quartermaster complains over missing bolts. Somewhere, a needle flashes in the low light. War may be decided by strategy, but it is survived through textiles. In India, cotton reaches extraordinary refinement under many regional kingdoms and later under the Mughal Empire. You enter a weaving town where the street seems tuned to craft. Looms clack behind walls. Women spin in shaded spaces. Boys carry bundles of yarn. Dyers wash skeins in tanks that smell of minerals, leaves, and fermented solutions with opinions of their own. Courtly demand encourages delicate muslins, painted and printed cottons, rich patterns, and fabrics suited for local elites as well as export. Cotton here is not merely abundant, it is prestigious. It can be so fine that travellers describe it with awe, and sometimes with exaggeration wearing perfume. A quirky tidbit floats through Mughal and early modern textile lore. Some fine Bengal muslins were said to be so delicate that a length of fabric could pass through a ring, or fit inside a tiny container. Stories like this are partly admiration, partly marketing, and partly the ancient human desire to make rich people gasp. Whether every tale is literal is less important than the reputation it reveals. People imagine the finest cotton as almost weightless, like mist persuaded into cloth. You lift and imagine muslin to your cheek and feel the idea of coolness more than substance. European visitors encounter cotton textiles with a mixture of desire, confusion, envy, and commercial hunger. In a chilly northern room, you watch someone unfold an imported cotton with bright printed flowers. The cloth seems to bring sunlight indoors. Compared with many local woolens and linens, printed cottons can appear lively, washable, and wonderfully informal. They make domestic spaces feel fresh. They make bodies feel lighter. They also annoy local textile producers who would very much prefer customers to stop falling in love with foreign fabric. Fashion, as usual, behaves like a polite rebellion carried out with sleeves. By the early modern period, European trading companies begin pursuing Asian cotton textiles with increasing intensity. Portuguese, Dutch, English, and French merchants seek access to Indian cloth, not only for European consumers but also for trade in Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Americas. Cotton becomes a tool of imperial competition. Ships arrive with silver, weapons, woolens, and ambitions. They leave with textiles that can purchase spices, secure alliances, clothe labourers, or feed expanding commercial systems. You stand on a dock and smell tar, salt, wet rope, pepper, and cotton bales wrapped tight for the voyage. The soft cargo feels strangely powerful. Specialists continue to debate how far European companies reshaped Indian textile production in the earliest phases of this trade, and how much local producers, brokers, and rulers controlled the terms. Some evidence shows foreign merchants ordering specific patterns and dimensions for distant markets. Other evidence reveals the strength of Indian merchants, artisan networks, and regional political authorities. The truth is not a simple story of outsiders commanding and locals obeying. It is a shifting negotiation, sometimes profitable, sometimes coercive, sometimes clever on all sides, and often recorded by men who are not exactly neutral about their own importance. You enter a coastal warehouse where cloth is sorted for different destinations. Some pieces are intended for Southeast Asian markets, where patterns and colours must suit local taste. Others will be carried west, where Europeans will rename, imitate, restrict, and crave them with embarrassing enthusiasm. A worker chalks marks on bundles. Another checks lengths against a rod. The cotton is not one product. It is many products, each designed for a buyer imagined from far away. A red floral print may delight one market and fail in another. A border too narrow, a colour too dull, and profit droops like wet laundry. Empire also changes cotton through law. In Europe, imported cottons become so popular that some governments restrict their use to protect domestic wool and silk industries. You hear the rustle of forbidden fashion in a private room, where a woman admires a printed cotton gown that authorities might prefer she did not wear. Nothing makes a fabric more tempting than telling people it is dangerous to the economy. Printed cottons, sometimes called calicos in European contexts, become symbols of taste, global trade, and controversy. They are light, colourful, and accused of ruining honest local cloth. Poor cotton, simply trying to be pretty, accidentally starts policy debates. The touch of these printed fabrics matters. You run your hand across a chintz with glossy finish, produced through skilled painting, mordant in dyeing, washing, and finishing. The surface feels smooth, almost cool. The pattern has flowers that may not belong to any real garden, vines curling as if they are listening to music. Such cloth transforms interiors, bed hangings, curtains, gowns, wrappers, and covers bring colour into rooms that may otherwise be dim with smoke and winter. Cotton becomes atmosphere. It changes how people experience home, privacy, leisure, and self-display. A room dressed in cotton is not merely furnished, it is staged. Meanwhile, in conquered lands and colonized economies, cotton can become an obligation. Rulers may encourage or force production. Taxes may be assessed in ways that pressure farmers and artisans. Merchants may advance money that ties workers into debt. Officials may regulate quality, export, or access. You walk through a village at sunset where the cotton plants stand under a copper sky, leaves dusty, bowls opening like small pale mouths. The beauty of the field does not erase the anxiety around it. Will the crop be enough? Will the buyer be fair? Will the tax collector arrive before the family has secured food? The plant is soft, but the system around it can be sharp. Court fashion, commercial rivalry, and imperial administration all gather around cotton until the fabric becomes a sign of a changing world. It crosses religious boundaries, political borders, and social ranks. A ruler wears it as refinement. A clerk counts it as revenue. A sailor loads it as cargo. A household uses it as comfort. A government bans it, then profits from it, then tries to manufacture it. Cotton is too useful to stay politely in one category. It becomes luxury, necessity, controversy, and strategy all at once, which is a rather busy schedule for something that began life wrapped around a seed. Night settles over the imperial city. Lamps glow behind carved screens. A distant call rises and fades over rooftops. In the workshop quarter, the last loom slows. Wet-dyed cloth hangs in the dark, breathing out the scent of water, ash, indigo, and labour. You touch a folded length of cotton and feel more than fabric. You feel taxes hidden in the threads, ships waiting in harbours, court robes sealed in storerooms, laws written in defence of jealous industries, and hands working carefully under watchful systems of power. Cotton has entered the dreams of empire, and empire, naturally, has decided to bill it for the privilege. You wake into the machine age with a sound that does not ask permission. It rattles through walls, floors, windows, and bones. The air trembles with iron teeth, turning shafts, leather belts, and thousands of threads pulled tight under gaslit ceilings. You stand in a cotton mill where morning is not marked by bird song or a cooking fire, but by a bell that slices through the cold, damp air. Workers pour through the gates in shawls, caps, clogs, and tired silence. The factory smells of oil, wet stone, hot metal, cotton dust, sweat, and coal smoke. Even the fog outside seems manufactured. Inside, the room is alive in the least peaceful way imaginable. Machines thump, hiss, clatter, and spin so quickly that individual movements blur into one continuous metallic weather. Your hand rests briefly on a wooden rail. It vibrates under your palm. The floorboards tremble through the soles of your feet. Loose cotton fibres float in the air like pale insects, catching lamplight, settling on hair, sleeves, eyelashes, and lips. You breathe, and the air feels thick. This is not the soft cotton of a quiet basket. This is cotton under command, stretched into a new discipline by steam, capital, and clocks. A mainstream historical fact stands at the centre of this roaring room. The mechanised spinning and weaving of cotton helped drive the Industrial Revolution in Britain. During the late 18th and 19th centuries, inventions such as the spinning jenny, the water frame, the spinning mule, and the power loom transformed cotton from a laborious handcraft into a mass-manufactured product. The change was not small. It altered towns, labour patterns, trade, wages, family life, timekeeping, architecture, and the meaning of work itself. Cotton became one of the great engines of industrial capitalism, which sounds impressive until you remember that many workers simply called it exhausting. You walk past rows of spinning machines. Fine strands run from bobbins in pale lines, trembling with tension. If one breaks, a worker darts in to piece it together, fingers moving fast near parts that could injure without hesitation. The threads look delicate, but the machine is not. It does not care if you're sleepy, hungry, grieving, or 10 years old. It only cares that the thread continues. The factory clock watches from the wall with the bland expression of an object that has never had to stand for 14 hours. Its hands move calmly. Everyone else must hurry. In many mill towns, work shifts from cottage and village settings into centralised factories. That change is not only about machines, it is about control. The factory owner controls the building, the power source, the machines, the hours, the pace, and often the housing nearby. Time becomes sliced into shifts. Meals become fitted around bells. Childhood becomes tangled with wage work. Women and children are employed in large numbers because they can be paid less and because their smaller hands are considered useful around certain machinery. It is a practical argument, which is often history's preferred disguise for unfairness. You step outside into a textile town at noon. Brick buildings rise through smoke. Narrow streets are damp with soot and rain. Laundry hangs from windows, though it has little hope of staying clean in a place where coal dust behaves like a civic decoration. Workers crowd near doorways with bread, tea, and small bundles of food. The smell is a mixture of boiled potatoes, smoke, horse manure, wet wool, cotton lint, and river water carrying factory waste. Children kick at stones in the street. A woman coughs into a cloth. A man leans against a wall and closes his eyes for the briefest possible holiday. The cotton mill changes the body. Your ears ring after only a short time inside. Workers learn to read lips or gesture because the noise swallows ordinary speech. The skin dries from heat and dust. Lungs suffer in rooms filled with floating fibre. Fingers grow quick, tough, and vulnerable. The back aches from standing. The mind adjusts to repetition, though not always willingly. Factory discipline is a new atmosphere, not merely a schedule. It surrounds you like steam. It teaches punctuality through punishment, efficiency through pressure, and obedience through hunger. Yet the machine age also produces astonishing abundance. Cotton cloth becomes cheaper and more widely available than ever. Printed cottons, plain shirtings, sheets, towels, handkerchiefs, underclothes, dresses, curtains, and work garments reach more people. Comfort spreads through mass production, though unevenly and at a cost. A family that once owned few textiles may now acquire more washable garments. A bed may have cotton sheets. A shop window may display printed fabrics in patterns bright enough to lift a grey afternoon. This is one of cotton's contradictions. The same system that grinds workers can also soften everyday life for consumers. You enter a printing works where cotton takes on colour at industrial scale. Copper rollers press patterns onto cloth with hypnotic speed. The machinery turns with heavy precision. Dyes smell of chemicals, mordants, water, and heated paste. Workers feed pale fabric through rollers, and it emerges covered in flowers, stripes, vines, dots, and fashionable fantasies. The colours are not merely decoration, they are appetite. Consumers want novelty. Manufacturers feed that desire by producing new patterns quickly, cheaply, and in great variety. Fashion begins to move faster. Taste becomes seasonal. Wardrobes become more flexible, and wallets, poor things, are invited to suffer creatively. A quirky tidbit belongs to this world of invention and rivalry. Some early machines became so famous, feared, or controversial that they inspired both admiration and sabotage. The word Luddite comes from textile workers who resisted machinery in the early 19th century, supposedly following a figure called Ned Ludd. Whether Ned was real, legendary, or mostly a useful name for anger is wonderfully uncertain. The point is not that workers hated technology because they were quaint and confused. Many feared wage cuts, unemployment, degraded skill, and loss of control. Machines did not arrive as neutral objects. They arrived with owners, prices, and consequences. Researchers continue to disagree about how much rising living standards can be credited to cheaper cotton goods when measured against the harshness of early factory labour. Some emphasise that mass-produced textiles gave ordinary people access to comfort, cleanliness, and variety. Others stress that the benefits were built on dangerous work, low pay, polluted towns, and unequal power. Both truths can stand in the same smoky street. History is rarely polite enough to choose one feeling. You can hold a cheap cotton shirt in your hand and feel relief, beauty, exploitation, ingenuity, and fatigue woven into one ordinary sleeve. The machines themselves seem almost alive. In a spinning room, belts loop from overhead shafts and slap softly as they move. Flywheels turn with patient menace. Metal spindles spin faster than your eye can follow. The whole building depends on power, first often from water in earlier mills, then increasingly from steam. Water mills rise near rivers, where the sound of rushing current joins the mechanical clatter. Steam mills crowd into towns near coal, labour, canals, and ports. Energy changes geography. The river no longer sets every limit. The coal seam, the harbour, the rail line, and the investor all begin to pull cotton toward new centres. Manchester becomes a symbol of this transformation, a city so closely associated with cotton manufacturing that its name travels around the world. Warehouses, mills, canals, counting houses, and railways bind it to distant fields and faraway markets. You stand beneath a grey sky as carts move through streets slick with rain. Chimneys exhale dark smoke. Bells ring from factories. Clerks hurry with ledgers under their coats. In a warehouse, bales are opened, samples cut, prices discussed. Cotton is no longer only a fabric. It is statistics, speculation, insurance, shipping schedules, machine maintenance, wages, strikes, and debt. The factory also changes night. Gaslights extend working hours and alter the mood of streets. Windows glow in long rows. The mill does not sleep like a household. It pauses, restarts, shifts, consumes. Workers return home with cotton dust in their hair and the sound of machines still echoing inside their skulls. In small rooms, families mend clothes, prepare food, wash, talk, and try to rest. A child's hand may still make spinning motions in sleep. The line between labour and body becomes thin. When work is repetitive enough, it follows you into dreams like an unpaid supervisor. And still, there is pride. You notice it in skilled mechanics who understand machines intimately, in spinners who can mend brakes with remarkable speed, in weavers who manage complex patterns, in printers who align colours cleanly, in workers who survive by competence. Industrial labour can be oppressive without making its workers passive. They organise, complain, adapt, joke, flirt, sing, strike, save money, read newspapers, join societies, and build political voices. Cotton mills create discipline, but they also gather people together. Crowds can suffer quietly for a while. Then they discover that numbers have a sound. You place your hand on a finished piece of factory cotton. It is smooth, even almost shockingly regular compared with hand-spun cloth. The threads are consistent. The weave is tight. The print repeats cleanly. It smells faintly of starch, dye, warehouse dust, and coal smoke. You can understand why consumers wanted it. You can also understand the cost carried invisibly inside it. The cloth feels modern because it is produced by systems larger than any one household can see. Machines have stretched cotton across continents and pulled human lives into new rhythms of speed. The day fades behind factory windows filmed with soot. The mill bell sounds again, deep and final for the shift. Workers spill into the evening, faces pale with lint, shoulders bowed, voices rising now that the machines have released the air. Rain begins lightly, tapping on brick, puddles and cartwheels. Steam drifts from vents. Somewhere inside, rows of spindles stand still for a brief interval. Silent, but not gentle. You breathe the damp, smoky air and feel cotton's transformation all around you. The plant's softness has entered iron. The thread has entered the clock. The fabric has become a force that remakes the day. You stand at the edge of a cotton field in the Atlantic world, where morning arrives bright, damp, and deceptively beautiful. The plants stretch outward in rows, their green leaves trembling under a low breeze. Dew clings to the boles. Birds call from the tree line. Somewhere beyond the fields, a bell rings, not softly, not kindly, but with the hard authority of a day already owned by someone else. The air smells of wet soil, crushed stems, wood smoke, and the sour heaviness of bodies waking to labour they did not choose. Cotton looks peaceful from a distance. Up close, it is full of commands. You step into the row and feel the earth give slightly beneath your feet. The morning coolness will not last. Already the sun presses through haze, and the leaves brush your wrists with a damp touch. Open bowls wait like white bursts inside dry brown shells. When your fingers reach for them, the lint feels soft, but the husk scratches. Cotton asks the hand to enter a little cage of sharp edges. Pull too carelessly, and the plant bites back with tiny cuts. Pull too slowly, and someone watching may decide you're not working hard enough. The field is beautiful. Yes, that is part of its cruelty. A mainstream historical fact sits heavily in this landscape plantation. Cotton in the American South expanded dramatically after the cotton gin made it easier to separate seeds from short staple cotton, and that expansion deepened the demand for enslaved labour. The machine did not end human suffering by making processing easier. Instead, it helped make cotton more profitable across huge inland regions where short staple cotton could grow. More land was taken, more fields were planted, more people were forced to work. The little white fibre became a pillar of wealth, and that wealth rested on stolen freedom. You hear the sound of picking all around you. It's quieter than factory machinery, but no less intense. Fingers move through leaves. Cotton drops into sacks with a muffled whisper. Long bags drag along the row, growing heavier as the day lengthens. There is coughing, low speech, the rustle of cloth, the slap of insects against skin. Supervisors move at the edges of hearing. The atmosphere carries strain, because everyone knows that the weight of each sack may be measured. Numbers become judgment. Pounds become pressure. A person's body is reduced to output, as if a life can be weighed like a bale. The heat rises and your shirt sticks to your back. Cotton lint clings to sweat on your forearms and neck. Dust gathers at the corners of your mouth. The smell of the field changes from damp green to hot leaf, dry soil, and human exhaustion. A child moves beside an older worker, learning not through choice, but through necessity. Families may work near one another while living under constant threat of separation. That is one of the deepest wounds of plantation slavery, not only labour taken, but time, kinship, safety, and the ordinary future that every person should have been allowed to imagine. You walk toward the gin house, where harvested cotton becomes a different kind of noise. The gin's teeth pull lint from seed with a harsh, rattling rhythm. Dust rises in pale clouds. Seeds collect in piles. The smell is dry and choking, mixed with oil, wood, and crushed plant matter. The cotton gin is often described as a clever invention, and mechanically, it is. But inventions live inside systems. A tool that saves labour in one place can create more forced labour somewhere else. History enjoys these bitter little jokes, though nobody in the field is laughing. A quirky botanical tidbit appears if you look closely at the plant itself. Cotton flowers do not remain the same colour, because many open pale or creamy white, then turn pinkish or reddish after pollination, like tiny blossoms quietly changing clothes in the heat. It is a strange loveliness in a harsh setting. The flower's delicate colour shift belongs to the plant's own life cycle, indifferent to human greed around it. You can stand there and feel the uneasy contrast a blossom blushes in the sun while an entire economy turns that plant into pressure, profit, and control. Plantation owners do not see cotton only as crop. They see credit. They see land values. They see shipments, loans, prices in distant markets, and political influence. Cotton bales travel from fields to river landings, from riverboats to ports, from ports to mills across the ocean. Each bale is compressed, wrapped, marked, insured, sold, and transformed into cloth. The trade looks orderly in ledgers. Lines of numbers march neatly across paper. But the order is deceptive. Behind those figures are hands scratched by bowls, backs bent in heat, songs carrying sorrow and endurance, and families trying to hold memory together. You stand near a river landing at dusk. The water smells of mud, fish, and rotting leaves. Steamboats cough smoke into the humid air. Men roll bales over planks while insects swarm around lamps. The bales are huge, dense, and awkward, wrapped in coarse covering and tied tight. They thud against the dock like sleeping animals. A cotton factor may later inspect samples pulled from them, judging colour, cleanliness, staple length, and quality by touch and eye. In distant counting houses, people will discuss these bales with calm financial language. Calm language can be very good at hiding violence. Historians still argue whether some enslaved workers found limited ways to shape the pace, methods, and small negotiations of cotton labour, or whether the plantation system's surveillance left almost no meaningful room for control. Evidence includes plantation records, autobiographies, oral histories, letters, court documents, and economic data, each with its own limits. The question matters because enslaved people were never merely victims inside a system. They resisted, adapted, protected one another, created culture, preserved skills, and made choices wherever any choice could be carved out. But it would be false comfort to make those narrow spaces sound larger than they were. You move through quarters where evening brings a different kind of work. The field day may be finished, but food must be prepared, children cared for, clothing mended, tools repaired, gardens tended where allowed, and grief held quietly enough to survive. Smoke from small fires drifts low. Cornmeal cooks in a pot. The smell is warm and thin, mixed with ash, sweat, damp cloth, and earth. Someone hums. Another voice joins, then another. Not for entertainment alone, but for breathing together inside a life made deliberately hard. Sound becomes shelter when walls are not enough. Cotton clothing itself carries painful irony here. Enslaved workers may be issued coarse garments, sometimes made from rough cloth that rubs the skin and wears out quickly. The plant they cultivate can become fabric they do not freely own, wealth they cannot claim, comfort denied to the hands that produced it. You touch a rough shirt sleeve and feel stiffness, sweat salt, and repeated washing. Cloth can dignify, but it can also mark control. What a person is allowed to wear, how much, how often, and of what quality, becomes part of the plantation's discipline. Beyond the plantation, cotton shapes politics with enormous force. It strengthens the power of slaveholding elites. It ties banks, insurers, shippers, brokers, and manufacturers to the plantation economy. It feeds mills that turn raw fibre into cheap textiles for global markets. Cotton's profitability helps defend the institution of slavery with speeches, laws, threats, and myths. People who benefit from exploitation become remarkably inventive at explaining why exploitation is somehow natural, necessary, or even generous. It is one of history's ugliest habits, turning profit into moral argument and expecting everyone else to admire the paperwork. You walk through a port city where cotton money is everywhere and nowhere. Warehouses line the water. Brokers speak in offices with polished desks. Ships creak against their moorings. The smell is tar, salt, tobacco, coffee, cotton dust, and damp rope. Well-dressed men pass under balconies, discussing prices as if price were the only story. A sample of cotton sits on a desk, clean and pale. It looks innocent there, removed from the field. That separation is part of the system. The farther cotton travels, the easier it becomes for buyers to forget the conditions that made it cheap. Still, enslaved people refuse to vanish into the crop. Their knowledge matters. They understand seasons, soil, picking techniques, weather, animals, tools, healing plants, songs, and hidden routes of communication. They carry spiritual traditions, family names, recipes, stories, and skills across generations, even under attack. Some resist by slowing work, breaking tools, escaping, learning to read where forbidden, preserving family ties, or passing information. Others resist simply by loving their children in a system designed to treat them as property. That kind of love is not sentimental. It is defiance with a heartbeat. Night gathers over the field. The open cotton bolls lose their brightness and become pale smudges under moonlight. Crickets begin their steady song. A dog barks far away. The heat lifts slowly from the soil, leaving the air damp against your face. You hold a small tuft of cotton between your fingers. It is weightless, almost tender. That is the terrible contradiction. The fibre itself is soft enough for sleep, yet the world built around it denied rest to so many. The field grows quiet, but not peaceful. Its silence is crowded with measured sacks, marked bales, unpaid hands, and lives that deserved far more than survival. You stand in a counting house where the windows are tall, the ledgers are heavy, and the air smells of ink, damp wool coats, coal smoke, and cotton samples stored in wooden drawers. Outside, carts grind over wet cobblestones. Inside, men speak in low voices about prices, shipments, insurance, credit, and risk, as if the world itself can be folded into columns. A clerk opens a small paper packet and spreads raw cotton across his palm. He rubs it between finger and thumb, judging length, cleanliness, and strength. The touch is soft. The mood is not. Cotton has become a global argument. By the 19th century, cotton is one of the key commodities linking farms, plantations, mills, banks, ports, and empires. A mainstream historical fact stands clearly here. Cotton was central to the growth of modern industrial capitalism, especially through the connections between raw cotton production, textile manufacturing, global trade, finance, and imperial power. It joins places that may never see one another. A field in one climate feeds a mill in another. A bank loan depends on a harvest. A ship's voyage depends on a market price. A family's wages depend on demand for cloth in a distant town. You step into a port where bales are stacked like pale, compressed thunderclouds. The smell is salt, tar, wet rope, tobacco, coffee, and cotton dust. Dock workers shout over gulls. Chains rattle. Wooden cranes groan. A bale swings above the quay, heavy and awkward, then drops with a thud that you feel in your ribs. Around it move brokers, sailors, warehousemen, insurers, and inspectors, each touching only one piece of the cotton system. Nobody holds the whole thing. That is part of its power. The machine is social, commercial, political, and almost invisible because every person can claim to be handling just their own little part. Cotton shapes wore most famously through the American Civil War. You enter a tense room where maps lie across a table and candles burn low. Southern leaders believe cotton will force foreign powers, especially Britain and France, to support them because their mills need raw fibre. This idea becomes known as King Cotton, a phrase so confident it practically enters the room wearing a crown and asking where the servants are. Yet cotton diplomacy does not work as hoped. Britain has stored supplies, finds alternative sources, and faces political limits. The cloth economy matters deeply, but it does not obey one planter's fantasy. Across the Atlantic, you walk through Lancashire during the cotton famine, when supplies of American cotton are disrupted. The mill town is grey and wet. Rain taps on slate roofs. Factory windows stare blankly. Machines sit silent or slow. Workers gather in streets that smell of soot, boiled tea, damp bread, and worry. The absence of cotton becomes a presence. Empty hands feel the missing thread. Families depend on wages from spinning and weaving, and when raw cotton stops arriving, hunger creeps into the room and sits down without being invited. Global dependency is no longer theory. It is a cold kitchen. Cotton shortages encourage expansion elsewhere. You find yourself along the Nile, where Egyptian cotton becomes more important to global markets during the same century. The air is dry and bright. Irrigated fields glow green beside brown desert. Water wheels creak. Farmers bend among plants while officials, creditors, and merchants watch the crop with intense interest. Cotton can bring wealth, but also debt and pressure. In Egypt, cotton production becomes tied to global finance and political intervention. The plant drinks from the river, but the profits often flow outward, along channels dug by empire, banks, and ambition. In India, cotton carries an even older and more painful complexity. You move through a village where a spinning wheel hums softly in the shade, then into a colonial office where cloth imports, taxes, railways, and market rules are discussed in dry official language. India has long been a great producer of cotton textiles, admired for skill and beauty. Under British rule, however, Indian cotton also becomes part of an imperial system that sends raw fibre outward and brings manufactured cloth back in. Local weaving communities face devastating competition from machine-made imports. The thread of empire tightens around livelihood. You touch a piece of hand-woven cloth. It is uneven, warm from the body that made it, and faintly scented with smoke, oil, and starch. Then you touch a factory cloth imported from overseas, regular, cheap, smooth, and abundant. The difference is not simply quality, it is power, machines, tariffs, shipping networks, colonial law, and capital stand behind the factory cloth. A handloom weaver competes not with another hand alone, but with an empire of iron, credit, and policy. That is not a fair wrestling match. It is more like being challenged to a duel by a steam engine. The struggle over cotton becomes political in the Indian independence movement. You hear the quiet turning of a charkha, a spinning wheel, in a room where the air smells of cotton fibre, floor mats, and evening oil lamps. Mohandas Gandhi encourages hand spinning and khadi, homespun cloth, as symbols of self-reliance, resistance, and moral discipline. The act is simple. Sit, draw fibre, turn the wheel, yet the meaning is enormous. Cloth becomes a protest you can wear. A garment becomes an argument against imperial dependence. A spinning wheel becomes a flag made of motion. A quirky tidbit belongs to this politics of cloth. The spinning wheel was once proposed and used as a powerful emblem in Indian nationalist imagery, and it appeared on early versions associated with the national flag movement. That may sound gentle, almost domestic, but it was politically sharp. Imagine unnerving an empire with a household tool, not a cannon, not a battleship, not a very stern speech under a chandelier, but a wheel turning cotton into thread. It is one of history's quieter jokes, and a good one. Sometimes the symbol that frightens power is something your grandmother could operate better than the governor. Cotton also shapes colonial Africa. You walk along a road where red dust rises around bare ankles and bicycle tyres. In some colonies, authorities push African farmers to grow cotton for export, sometimes through taxes, forced cultivation, labour demands, or tightly controlled buying systems. The field smells of dry grass, sweat, and sun-baked soil. A farmer looks at the crop with mixed feelings. Cotton can provide cash, but it may also displace food crops, increase vulnerability, and expose families to prices they cannot control. The plant becomes an instrument of policy. The farmer becomes the shock absorber for distant markets. Historians still argue whether colonial cotton schemes should be understood mainly as engines of extraction, flawed modernization projects, local negotiation, or some uneasy combination of all three. The answer shifts by region. Some farmers adapted cotton growing to their own needs, using it to gain cash, pay taxes, or enter markets. Others experienced coercion, low prices, and loss of control. Officials often described cotton schemes as development, because development is a lovely word that can carry a surprising amount of luggage. The field itself keeps the argument grounded. Who chose the crop? Who set the price? Who bore the risk? You travel east to Japan, where cotton and textiles play a major role in industrial growth. The atmosphere changes to a factory district where rain darkens wooden walls and steam fogs the windows. Machines turn. Workers, many of them young women in early industrial textile mills, live under strict schedules and close supervision. Japan's textile industries, including cotton spinning, helped the country build export strength and industrial capacity. Cotton here is not just imported comfort. It becomes part of national strategy, modernization, and competition with Western powers. The thread enters the story of a rising industrial state. In China, cotton has long been woven into everyday life and regional economies. You pass through villages where cotton jackets, padded garments, quilts, and cloth shoes help people meet the cold with layered practicality. In treaty port cities and industrial centres, imported yarn, local weaving, foreign firms, Chinese entrepreneurs, and shifting politics all interact. Cotton becomes part of debates about sovereignty, labour, modernisation, and national survival. You hear looms in alley workshops and larger machines in mills, their rhythms different but connected. The smell is river damp, coal smoke, bean oil, and cotton lint. The global cotton economy also helps build the habits of modern finance, futures contracts, price reports, telegraph messages, commodity exchanges, marine insurance, credit instruments, and warehouse receipts turn cotton into numbers that move faster than the bales themselves. You stand beside a telegraph operator as messages click through the wire. This sound is tiny, insect-like, almost delicate. Yet those clicks can change prices across oceans. A storm, a war rumour, a bad harvest, a strike, a new tariff, and the value of cotton shifts. Fabric touches skin, but cotton prices touch nerves. There is something dreamlike about this system, though not always soothing. A person buying a shirt may never know the field, mill, ship, broker, dye house, or law behind it. A politician may speak of national destiny while leaning on customs revenue from cloth. A banker may never smell a cotton field but still profit from its harvest. A worker may never see the plant but breathe its dust every day. Cotton creates intimacy without knowledge. It touches everyone and remains partly hidden, like a whisper sewn into a seam. Night falls over a city of warehouses and mills. The river is black except where lamps tremble on the surface. You hear carts fading into distant streets, the low horn of a ship, the tired cough of a worker going home. A bale rests under canvas, waiting for sale, shipment, or manufacture. It looks harmless in the dim light, just compressed fibre tied with bands. Yet inside that quiet bundle are wars, debts, protests, machines, taxes, hunger, flags, fortunes, and fragile hopes. You place your hand on the rough wrapping. It is cool from the night air. Cotton has become world power, not by shouting, but by being needed everywhere at once. You wake in a room where cotton has become so ordinary that it almost disappears. The sheet under your shoulder is cotton, or cotton blended with something modern and slightly suspicious. The towel on a chair waits with soft loops ready to drink water from skin. A t-shirt lies folded nearby, silent and familiar, carrying the faint smell of laundry soap, cupboard wood, and the warm human trace that never fully leaves clothing. Outside, a delivery truck grumbles past. Somewhere in the building, a washing machine turns with a watery thump. Cotton has entered the rhythm of daily life so completely that you hardly notice it touching you. You pull on a simple cotton shirt and feel the fabric settle across your back. It is not royal. It is not rare. It does not announce itself with jewels or embroidery. Its power is closeness. It moves with your shoulders, warms slightly at the chest, wrinkles where you sit, softens at the collar, and remembers the shape of your day. This is the modern triumph of cotton, not always luxury, not always spectacle, but presence. It becomes the fabric of waking, working, exercising, cleaning, nursing, sleeping, mourning, protesting, and lounging around with serious intentions to be productive, which of course may not happen. A mainstream historical fact rests inside your drawer. Cotton became one of the most widely used textile fibres in the modern world, especially through mass production, global trade, and the rise of ready-made clothing. The 19th and 20th centuries brought standardized sizes, department stores, mail-order catalogues, sewing machines, advertising, and later fast-moving global supply chains. Clothing no longer always begins with a local tailor, a household loom, or a family chest of fabric. It can arrive folded in paper, stacked under bright lights, or sealed in plastic, ready to be chosen by size, price, colour, and mood. You walk into an early 20th century department store. The air smells of polished wood, perfume, paper tags, wool coats, and fresh cotton stacked on counters. Electric lights glow above neat displays. Clerks stand ready, alert but not too alert, because selling things requires the delicate art of appearing helpful without looking hungry. Bolts of cotton print unroll with a soft flap. White undergarments are arranged like clouds with price labels. Sheets are praised for durability. Towels are touched, squeezed, compared. Cotton becomes domestic promise. It says clean home, healthy children, respectable bed, proper shirt, decent life. Advertising gives cotton a new voice. Posters, catalogues, magazines, and radio scripts teach people what fabric should mean. A cotton dress is not merely a dress. It is freshness in summer. A cotton towel is not merely absorbent. It is care after a bath. A white cotton shirt is not merely clothing. It is discipline, office respectability, school neatness, masculine simplicity, or feminine purity, depending on who is being sold what. Modern marketing wraps cotton in emotion, then offers the emotion at a discount. Humanity looks at the discount and says, yes, perhaps I do need 6. You move into a kitchen where cotton appears as apron, dish towel, curtain, tablecloth, flour sack, and baby bib. The room smells of coffee, toast, soap, and damp fabric drying near a warm stove. A radio murmurs. A spoon taps against a bowl. The cotton dish towel is not glamorous, but it is heroic in the quietest possible way. It wipes spills, lifts hot pans, covers rising dough, dries hands, and eventually becomes a rag for something too undignified to discuss. Every household has a textile underclass, and cotton often accepts the job without complaint. Denim carries cotton into a different mood. You stand in a shop where jeans hang in rows, dark blue, faded blue, black, stiff, soft, patched, expensive enough to make a 19th century miner rise from the grave just to ask questions. Denim began as durable work cloth associated with labour, miners, cowboys, farmers, mechanics, and people who needed garments that could survive abrasion. Over time, jeans become youth culture, rebellion, casual wear, fashion, and eventually office wear in places where the rules surrender slowly. The cloth is still cotton, twilled and dyed, but its meaning shifts like light on worn knees. You run your hand across a pair of old jeans. The thighs are faded, the seams are thick, the pocket edges frayed smooth by years of keys and coins. Denim feels personal because it records use. It creases where your body bends. It pales where your hands rest. It tears where life insists. A new pair can feel stiff, almost argumentative. But old denim becomes intimate. It has the comfortable honesty of something that no longer tries too hard. This is cotton as memory, shaped not by ceremony, but by errands, dust, bus seats, music venues, workshops, and long afternoons. The t-shirt tells another modern story. You step into a warm city street where cotton t-shirts move past you in every colour. Some are plain, some carry slogans, bands, sports teams, political messages, jokes, company logos, cartoon animals, and mysterious designs that probably meant something in 1998. The t-shirt begins as underclothing and military issue, then becomes casual outerwear, youth uniform, advertising space, protest sign, souvenir, and personal billboard. It is perhaps the most talkative simple garment humans have invented. A rectangle of cotton knit becomes a portable announcement. Here is what I like. Mock, support, remember. Or was given for free at an event. A quirky tidbit sits right on the chest. The plain white t-shirt became iconic, partly through film stars and soldiers, turning underwear into public fashion. What had once been hidden beneath other clothes stepped into daylight and looked surprisingly confident. That is a rather bold career change for a garment. Cotton knit helped make it possible because it was soft, washable, stretchy enough for comfort, and cheap enough for mass use. The t-shirt proves that modern fashion does not always need complicated tailoring. Sometimes it only needs a neckline, sleeves, and cultural permission to stop being shy. Uniforms bring cotton into discipline again, but in a quieter civilian way. You see nurses in crisp cotton blends, cooks in aprons, painters in white trousers, schoolchildren in shirts, soldiers in fatigues, athletes in training gear, cleaners in practical garments, mechanics in coveralls. Cotton can signal role and reliability. It can be bleached, boiled, patched, printed, and replaced. A uniform says the individual body is part of a larger function, yet each body leaves its private mark: sweat at the collar, ink on a cuff, dust at the knees, soap smell in the sleeves. Standard clothing still becomes personal through wear. Cotton also changes hygiene. Washable cotton underclothes, towels, bedding, gauze, bandages, pads, diapers, and hospital linens help shape modern expectations of cleanliness and care. You enter a laundry room filled with steam, starch, and the heavy floral scent of detergent. Sheets churn in hot water. Towels slap inside machines. Lint gathers in filters like pale grey felt. The sound is domestic thunder. Clean cotton carries a moral feeling in many societies. Fresh sheets suggest health. White towels suggest order. A crisp shirt suggests self-control. Of course, cotton wrinkles at the worst possible moment, because even civilization needs humility. Historians still argue whether 20th century cotton culture should be understood mainly as a democratization of comfort, a triumph of consumer persuasion, or an uneasy mixture of both. Cheap cotton goods truly brought more washable clothing and household textiles within reach for many people. At the same time, Advertising encouraged constant replacement, new styles, seasonal desire, and the belief that a better life might be purchased in fabric form. The debate is difficult because both experiences are real. Cotton can offer dignity, cleanliness, and ease, while also feeding a cycle of wanting, buying, discarding, and wanting again. You step into a modern global garment factory, fluorescent lights buzz overhead, sewing machines race in long rows, needles flashing so quickly they become silver blur. The air smells of machine oil, pressed cloth, cardboard, plastic packaging, and strong tea from a break corner. Cotton pieces are cut from stacks, stitched into shape, checked, folded, tagged, boxed, and shipped. The garment may cross several borders before it reaches a shop. A shirt that feels simple on your skin may have travelled through fields, gins, spinning mills, dye houses, cutting rooms, ports, warehouses, and screens full of inventory numbers. A touch of modern cotton is often engineered. Fibres are combed, ring-spun or open-end spun, knitted or woven, mercerized, brushed, pre-shrunk, blended, softened, finished, treated, and labelled with cheerful promises. Some cotton feels crisp, some velvety, some stretchy because other fibres have joined the party. Organic cotton, recycled cotton, Superma, Egyptian, Pima, Jersey, Poplin, Percale, Sateen, Canvas, Terry, Flannel. Twill the names multiply until the bedding aisle becomes a small exam you did not study for. You stand there touching pillowcases like a philosopher, wondering whether thread count is truth or sorcery. Cotton becomes intimate in memory. A hospital blanket around a newborn, a grandmother's apron smelling of flour, a baseball cap faded by sun, a wedding shirt ironed with nervous care, a protest banner painted on old sheeting, a quilt pieced from dresses no one could throw away. Cotton receives human feeling because it stays near life's ordinary edges. It absorbs sweat, milk, tears, rain, soap, smoke, and perfume. It stains, frays, softens, and survives in drawers long after voices are gone. Some fabrics impress you from across a room. Cotton waits until you touch it. At night, you return to the room where the sheet has cooled in the dark. Outside, traffic softens to a low hush. The washing machine has stopped. A towel hangs quietly, drying in slow folds. Your cotton shirt rests over a chair, holding the shape of your shoulders for a while, then gradually letting it go. This is modern cotton's strange magic. It is everywhere. Inexpensive enough to ignore, intimate enough to remember, simple enough to wash, complicated enough to contain the world. You slide one hand across the sheet, feel its plane weave under your palm, and understand why the most ordinary fabric can still feel like home. You stand in a cotton field at sunrise, but this field belongs to the modern world, with old soil under new questions. The plants are low and green, their leaves trembling in a light wind that carries the smell of damp earth, diesel from a distant tractor, and the sharp, clean scent of morning irrigation. Water ticks through pipes in small metallic pulses. Birds call from fence posts. A phone buzzes in someone's pocket, which is not exactly ancient poetry, but it is honest. Cotton has reached an age where every soft thread must answer harder questions. How much water? How much land? How much labour? How much waste? And who pays the hidden cost? You walk between rows where white bowls open in the heat. The fibre brushes your fingertips with its familiar softness, but the field no longer feels innocent. Modern cotton farming can involve irrigation, fertilizers, pesticides, machinery, global pricing, seed patents, climate stress, and certification labels that promise better practices with varying degrees of clarity. A mainstream fact sits plainly in the soil. Cotton remains one of the world's most important natural textile fibres. grown across many countries and used in clothing, home goods, medical supplies, industrial materials, and countless everyday objects. Its reach is enormous because its usefulness never went away. Yet cotton's future is not only about growing more, it is about growing differently. You kneel beside the soil and press it between your fingers. It crumbles, warm and slightly gritty. Healthy soil smells alive, with a dark, fungal richness beneath the dust. Damaged soil smells thinner, almost tired. Farmers now face choices shaped by water scarcity, changing rainfall, heat waves, pests, and market pressure. Some turn toward drip irrigation to reduce waste. Some use integrated pest management, watching insect life carefully rather than treating every field as a battlefield. Some rotate crops, protect soil cover, or choose varieties better suited to local conditions. Cotton is thirsty in reputation, though the truth is more complicated. Some cotton grows with heavy irrigation, some depends mostly on rainfall, some systems are careful, some are wasteful. Blanket statements are comfortable, but agriculture prefers details, which is rude of it but necessary. You hear water moving through a narrow irrigation line, a soft clicking and trickling sound under the leaves. In a dry region, that sound can feel like money leaving the farm drop by drop. In a well-managed field, it can feel like survival. Cotton's future may depend not on one grand solution, but on thousands of local decisions made under difficult skies. You step into a seed storage room where sacks are stacked against cool walls. The air smells of burlap, dust, paper labels, and faint oil from machinery. Modern cotton seeds may be bred for yield, fiber quality, pest resistance, drought tolerance, or compatibility with certain farming systems. Genetically modified cotton has been widely adopted in some countries, especially varieties designed to resist certain insects or tolerate specific herbicides. Supporters point to reduced losses and easier pest control in some contexts. Critics worry about seed costs, dependency, resistant pests, biodiversity, and farmer vulnerability. The seed is small, but the argument around it is large enough to need its own chair. Experts still disagree about whether high-tech cotton farming is the best route towards sustainability, or whether lower input, regionally adapted farmer-led methods offer a safer path in the long run. The answer depends on climate, pests, water, land rights, knowledge, infrastructure, and who controls the tools. A method that helps one farming community may burden another. A technology that reduces one chemical may increase dependence elsewhere. Cotton refuses to become a simple moral object. It is a crop, a business, a fabric, a livelihood, a risk, and a promise, all packed into one pale bowl. Now you enter a sorting facility where used garments arrive in huge compressed cubes. The smell is strange and human detergent, dust, cardboard, old perfume, warehouse air, and the faint stale scent of clothes that have travelled too far without sunlight. Workers cut the bindings, and t-shirts, towels, jeans, sheets, and scraps spill out in soft avalanches. Some can be resoled, some can be cut into rags, some can be mechanically recycled, shredded back into fibre. But cotton fibres shorten when recycled this way, making them harder to spin into strong new yarn without blending. Even recycling has limits, because physics enjoys keeping everyone humble. You touch shredded cotton fibre, it feels different from fresh lint, looser and more tired, like paper that has been read by many hands. Still, it has possibility. Recycled cotton can become insulation, stuffing, cleaning cloths, blended yarns, and new fabrics when handled carefully. Chemical recycling methods are also being explored for cellulose-based textiles, trying to break material down and rebuild it into usable fibre. The dream is circular fashion garments returning as garments, waste becoming resource, the closet becoming less of a one-way road to landfill. It is a lovely dream, though not yet as simple as the brochure would prefer. A quirky modern tidbit comes from cotton's hidden uses. Cotton is not only shirts and sheets, cotton linters. The short fibres left on seeds after ginning can be used to make high-purity cellulose for products such as paper, filters, plastics, and even materials linked to film, explosives, and cosmetics. Yes, the same plant family that gives you a soft pillow also wanders into industrial chemistry wearing a lab coat. Cotton has always been more versatile than it looks. It smiles gently from the laundry basket while quietly moonlighting in places where no towel has any business being. You move into a design studio where fabric swatches lie across a table. The room smells of coffee, paper, warm electronics, and new cloth. A designer runs a hand over organic cotton jersey, recycled blends, untreated canvas, and crisp poplin. Labels matter here. Organic cotton promises farming without certain synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, though yields, water use, certification costs, and access can vary. Fair trade labels try to address wages and farmer income. Better sourcing programs aim to reduce harm. But the label is never the whole story. It is a doorway into questions, not a magic spell stitched into the collar. Consumers also stand inside cotton's future, whether they notice or not. You open a drawer and see more garments than one person truly needs, which is a very common historical condition known as "I might wear that someday." Every purchase carries demand. Every wash uses water and energy. Every tumble dry wears fibres down. Every discarded shirt joins a waste stream. The most sustainable cotton item may sometimes be the one already owned, repaired, washed gently, worn longer, and not replaced because a website whispered new arrivals at 11:43 at night. Cotton asks for care not only in fields, but in bedrooms, laundries, and closets. You sit with someone mending a cotton shirt near a window. Rain taps softly on the glass. The room smells of tea, thread, and the faint metal scent of a needle tin. The shirt is thinned at the elbow. The patch is not invisible, but it is neat. Mending changes the meaning of fabric. A repaired garment says time has value. It says use can be honoured. It says perfection is not the only kind of beauty. In a world trained to replace, the needle becomes quietly rebellious. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady enough to keep a beloved shirt alive. Cotton also carries memory through quilts, heirlooms, flags, uniforms, baby clothes, work aprons, and funeral cloths. You open a cedar chest and smell wood, lavender dust, and age. Inside, folded cotton pieces hold family stories, a quilt square from a dress, a handkerchief with initials, a child's small shirt, yellowed at the seams, a tablecloth with a stain everyone remembers but no one admits causing. These objects are not valuable because they are rare. They matter because cotton holds traces of ordinary life. It is intimate archive, a soft museum of touch. In scientific spaces, researchers study cotton fibre at microscopic scale. Under magnification, a cotton fibre looks like a twisted ribbon collapsed and spiraled, with a structure that helps explain how it spins, absorbs moisture, and takes dye. You imagine entering that tiny landscape, walking along a pale cellulose ribbon curled like a dry stream bed. The touch of cotton against your skin begins at a scale too small for your fingers to see. Comfort is engineering by nature, refined by farming, spinning, weaving, finishing, washing, and time. The simplest t-shirt is not simple. It is a treaty between biology and habit. The future of cotton may not belong to cotton alone. Synthetic fibres compete with it. Regenerated cellulose fibres imitate some of its softness. Blends change performance, stretch, cost, and durability. Climate change may shift where cotton can be grown reliably. Labour movements, consumer pressure, traceability systems, and regulation may reshape supply chains. Digital tags, fibre testing, satellite monitoring, and farm data could make cotton's journey more visible, though visibility does not automatically equal justice. A map can show a route. It cannot, by itself, make that route fair. You stand again in the field as late afternoon lowers into amber light. The cotton plants rustle softly, leaves dry at the edges, bowls open like quiet lanterns. A farmer walks the row, touching plants with practiced concern. In the distance, machinery waits. Above, clouds gather, uncertain but luminous. Cotton's story is not finished because the world is still deciding what comfort should cost. The fabric against your skin asks an old question in a new voice: can softness be made without hiding harm? The answer is not fully here yet. It is being grown, tested, argued, sewn, washed, repaired, and remembered. The evening settles more slowly now. You let the field fade into a room with low light, a clean cotton sheet, and the hush of air moving through curtains. The long road of the fibre grows quiet in your mind. Seed, soil, rain, hand, wheel, loom, ship, mill, needle, drawer, skin. Each word softens as it passes. You do not need to hold the whole history tightly. Let it loosen, like thread sliding through relaxed fingers. The cotton near you is only fabric now, cool and plain, resting without demand. Outside, the night deepens, the world exhales, the sheet rises and falls with your breathing, gentle as a small white cloud, and the story drifts away into sleep.